Ready?
Ready or not, I really haven't even thought this through, but I guess if it doesn't work out, I can take two, right?
That's true. Just go for
Okay.
it.
Welcome, bridge builders. We do not have Mitch today, and neither of us have done this before, so we're just jumping in.
We're missing our fearless leader.
Yes, he's our mama bird, and he kicked us out of the nest.
Yeah, here we go.
And here we are trying to fly on our own. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think even what he said at the beginning, but I'm glad you're here, and thanks for taking time and effort to listen and maybe consider some different perspectives.
Yeah, and also, he usually says, if you can, give us money.
Give us money.
That there's links in the description, and like, follow, and share.
Yep.
I feel like he says that stuff.
I think so too.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing the responsibility.
it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
let's jump in. Do you want to kind of introduce our
topic?
our topic?
Sure. So today we're going to talk about gender and power dynamics in the church. This is a topic that I could talk about forever and probably will be talking about until the day that I die. So thank you to you, Ashton, and for everyone listening and watching for joining me. I have left the church, as in I no longer believe in any of the truth claims. I don't feel any kind of allegiance to the institution. I am not active, and I'm a feminist. And then that there's some contrast between my positioning and Ashton's, which I'll let you sort of introduce yourself as far as how you're oriented when it comes to some of these issues.
Sure. I guess I'll give a little background as well as far as feminism goes. I grew up feeling like feminism was almost a swear word.
Yeah, it's one of the great evils. I think there was, who was it? Ezra Taft Benson that said it was one of the great evils,
One of
along
the
with
three.
intellectualism and homosexuality, maybe? Yeah. I don't know. It's
I'd
really
have to
bad.
review some of the quotes, but
Yeah, wicked.
yeah. I guess for me personally, without realizing it, I find myself as a feminist of sorts as well, without knowing that I was.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a woman give a TEDx talk. Her name's Dawn Smith, and she said, "I'm a feminist because I believe that women are human." And I feel like that's kind of a no-brainer for me, and I definitely resonate with that. And as far as just openness to expanding my worldview and perspective, that's kind of my history broadly, and kind of my process at this point. But currently, I'm an Elders Quorum President in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and so I lead a bunch of men as far as my responsibilities in church go. So I'm obviously actively attending, and that's kind of, just coming from different sides of an issue or a broad issue with lots of conversations to be had, and I'm excited about it. And I know that we have perspectives that we can both appreciate and maybe disagree on a few things, but hopefully, model a good way to converse, even though we might have different positioning.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, today we have both come prepared with questions for one another. They're not like gotcha questions, but I mean, if you feel like you have gotcha questions for me at some point, I'm happy to hear them.
It's not really my style, but
that's true. We want to learn from one another, and at least me personally, like, I don't feel a need to remain completely comfortable, and I also don't feel a need to make other people comfortable. It's never my intention to. It's not usually my intention to make people uncomfortable, but I think that discomfort is just an essential. There's just no growing without it. You know what they say about
comfort zone.
Comfort zones, and there's no comfort in your growing zone and no growing in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And when it comes to conversations across the Mormon spectrum, like if, we had a way of snapping our fingers and taking the discomfort out of it, we would be happy to do that. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. And so I think we're trying to model how do you get along and be kind even in the midst of that discomfort. Yeah.
Agreed. You had mentioned something on our preparations, I think by text, that there's an old quote in the church that says the gospel is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes along the same lines there, as far as we want to bring empathy and compassion and sympathy to those that are in the middle of really hard times, and those that maybe have a little bit of ability to expand themselves. Some of that happens through that discomfort and challenging of our worldviews and expanding our outlooks on things.
Yeah, I agree.
Should we jump in?
Yeah, let's jump in.
Okay, would you like me to start with the question?
Hit me.
Okay.
Not literally.
Yes,
That would
metaphorically
not be very
hit you.
feminist of me.
Okay, so this one's just more broad. Do you think that the LDS Church has improved in terms of gender equality in the last 10 years? And then a follow-up the last 50 years, and then a follow-up the last 100 years. So has the church improved in terms of gender equality in the last 10 years?
Is it okay if I kind of go the opposite way and start
Absolutely, yeah.
And come forward?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Mormonism has a really rich history of feminism. And I think that a lot of people, that often doesn't land very comfortably with people. For some, I think it's because like feminism is like the F word, and they don't, Mormon women being feminist, good Mormon women being feminist isn't part of their worldview. I think that there are other people that perceive the church as having enormous gender inequalities in it, and systemic oppression and harm caused to women, and I would say also to children as well as a result of it. And so hearing me say that the church has a long, rich history of feminism, I think like at first hearing can maybe feel just wrong to people. I think that there are a lot of people that doesn't resonate with. However, Mormon women have often been very innovative. And while I think that polygamy was an oppressive system and not ultimately good for women, if we look at it as a whole, I think that the family dynamics of not having a man immediately available to a lot of women just kind of like shook things up a little bit and caused them to be independent and innovative in ways that were not necessarily common for that time. There's also the story, and I wish I remembered her name, of the woman that ran against her husband in a Senate race and won. I love that. A lot of women who were doctors and midwives in Mormon history. And so the church, women in the church have, at every point in history of the church, there has been a woman making progress for women in some way. I also think that the trajectory of women's place in the church has not been linear, that there are powers that women have had at one point that there's been a bit of an ebb and a flow. For example, we've heard stories of women giving priesthood blessings in the early church, and that's something that has gone away.
Yeah.
Or, for example, in the Bay Area more recently, that there was a stake or stakes where women where female leaders were regularly sitting on the stand in meetings. And that looks like progress, but like a kibosh has been put on that, right?
Yeah, true.
And I do think that as women have been granted rights and privileges in broader society, that has been true of LDS women as well. Sometimes I think that the church itself hasn't actually had much to do with that.
You're saying more cultural progress?
Yeah. There's been
not
an enormous,
institutional.
There's
Sure.
been an enormous amount of cultural progress that Mormon women enjoy. But I don't feel like much of it has been handed down from the institution. I also, I think that a lot of times that much of the progress that we see as far as what is handed down by the institution feels a little bit pithy to me. For example, I recently heard online about a ward where the teenage girls had become allowed to carry the sacrament tray into the mother's room. And that felt like a big win, that these girls could carry a tray of bread 5 feet to a very, very small demographic of the church congregation. And I don't want to say that that doesn't matter, because I think that that's probably a meaningful assignment to those girls. I think that that's like a meaningful thing for those women that they should have been getting all along, in my opinion. And so I don't want to be dismissive of real experiences that girls and women and men are having that feel important. But it seems so small to me.
Maybe like a consolation, a token effort, maybe not.
And also the fact that along with everything else gets handed down by a man. That it's a man that gave them permission to do that.
Yeah.
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 And that's how I would answer that question.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for sharing. I feel like that is a very fair approach to take as far as the ebb and flow, or the last time we talked about how progression works is there are rises and then hopefully smaller falls and then larger rises, smaller falls. I think Mitch put it 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Is that kind of what you're saying, the ebb and flow, or are we kind of maybe at square one in certain things? And
yeah. I would say that in some very important ways, we are still at square one.
Okay.
And in context of that square one, I would say all of the progress that is made to me feels like a consolation prize, which means not enough.
Yeah. Well, you'd mentioned giving priesthood blessings early on with the Relief Society when it was initially organized. And now, I mean, that's almost blasphemous, you could say, or heretical for a woman to give a priesthood blessing. And so in terms of feminism, that's even digression from where 100%. It has been. Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
No further questions right now.
All right.
Do you want to take a turn?
Are you ready for your question? Okay, this is a little bit lengthy. One apologetic reasoning for why women don't have the priesthood that I often hear is that women are better than men spiritually, like intrinsically, and that the difference in priesthood ordination makes them equal. There's also the joke about that when you need a new stake president, you find the most righteous person in the stake and then call her husband to be the stake president. I've also often seen men be encouraged to marry up spiritually. The implication is, that the dynamic is just that women are spiritually better. Thinking back throughout your life, do you feel like this message has been given to you, and how have you related to it in the past, and how do you relate to it now?
Yes, I do relate to that. There's a lot there, and I'll try and I've got the question in front of me that I'll try to hit on.
Yeah, and you don't have to hit on all of
some of these things.
Just like the vibe of
for sure,
of women being intrinsically spiritually better, and that's why like the disparity is justified as far as priesthood ordination.
Yeah. I've heard the phrase separate but equal as applied to racial differences.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've heard that same phrase used to describe the difference between men and women, that they're equal, but they're just different or they're separate. And I think when we separate into gender roles and expectations and allowances for each sex, that naturally creates an inequality, not just a separation. Yeah, I think a lot of this points towards something that I've felt for a few years at this point, just how we're almost taught as a couple to be enmeshed as far as family dynamics go. And it's almost a dependency that the husband is very dependent on the wife is very dependent on the husband. And my perspective at this point in my life, and having been married for 10 years and just conversations and building relationship with my wife, I feel like it's a much healthier approach to take, that we are independent people. We were once dependent on our parents, and we hopefully were prepared to exit the family of origin, become independent people, and then begin our own families of procreation, right? And I think oftentimes culturally, maybe this is a societal thing, not just a religious thing, but it's almost as if we're expected to have a regression back into dependence as a couple on each other, instead of maintaining our independence as individuals, but collaborating together to build a relationship as a couple and to build a family. So in that way, that's kind of a basis of how I think about a healthy, functional, adult married relationship. And I think just as far as the stake president, you find the most righteous person and then call the husband, right? That joke. And I think that's an attempt within the doctrine and the theology. It's an attempt to identify that it's not just the man being called, but the family unit, I guess. But as far as like the outward appearance of things, it really is only the stake president that makes the final decisions and is seen as the spokesperson or the president of the stake, right? That deciding power is definitely not on, according to the joke, the most righteous person in the stake, but
because
only on the man in that relationship.
When it comes, I guess, within the system, when it comes to power, his gender is more important than his righteousness.
Yeah.
Because if righteousness was the most important thing, then she would be the stake president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other follow-up questions, like any specifics? I have a lot of thoughts and I don't know exactly where to take some of these.
Do you think that women are intrinsically more spiritual?
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, I think, I mean, even in terms of like, I've had the conversation as far as like physical strength. It's like, sure, generally you could say in a statistical way, men they have more muscle mass and whatnot, right? And are more physically strong. But that doesn't mean that there's not major overlap on the spectrum of physical strength, where like, I feel like, I mean, I am a male and I know of a lot of women who are even physically much stronger than I am, you know, and some of that's just DNA. Some of that's hard work that they've put in and the lack of work that I put in at a lot of different times in my life. And I think as far as spirituality, I don't know if that comparison with physical strength even correlates in terms of that there's a trend one way or the other and that there's overlap, but it just depends on spirituality to me is a very individual trait and practice regardless of gender and sex. So that's my perspective.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Your turn.
And just a quick follow-up. I don't know if I've ever really considered that before you asked me the question. You gave me the question beforehand, but I've never really considered that there was like a systemic difference there. But like looking back, I feel like there is expectations for, at least in a household, for the mother to be like the one that gets the ball rolling is in terms of spiritual routines and nurturing, and that the father is expected to like take the lead in terms of maybe the almost more figurehead.
Yeah, or maybe being like the enforcer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that the wife and mother is like the initiator,
Yeah.
and the one that follows through.
And kind of like the heart of it.
Yeah.
You know, like the one that, yeah, kind of the heart of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Next question. Okay, and there are two here that are very interrelated. Do you think gender equality can exist as long as women can't be ordained to the priesthood? And do you think gender equality can exist as long as men are ordained to the priesthood? So two separate questions, very interrelated. Let's start with the first one. Do you think gender equality can exist as long as women can't be ordained to the priesthood?
No. The end.
Okay.
I think it is just that simple. No.
No, it can't.
No. I think that as long as the decision-making positions are exclusively occupied by men, and as long as every single calling that a woman has in the church answers to a man, and almost no calling in the church that a man holds, except for maybe like a few in primary, answers to a woman, like absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah. And then again, related, do you think gender equality can exist as long as men are ordained to the priesthood?
What, like, if you mean like if men are and women aren't, or do you mean like if men and women both were?
That, I guess that's kind of the question.
I mean, I think
should priesthood be done away with, or should women be allowed to be ordained to the priesthood also? If equality is what we're both striving for.
Oh, if equality is what we are both striving for. So, yes, I mean, I think that men can remain ordained. And I think that if women were also ordained, then I think that I'm not going to say that I think that equality can necessarily, I don't think that would like automatically bring equality. Of course not, right? Like we have a history, we have a context.
Sure.
I also don't think that like exact equality is also the goal, because again, like we have context, we have history, and treating men and women identically does not necessarily mean that women are being treated well. For example, you know, I hear people who think that they're really funny, really clever, say like, oh, you're a feminist, I guess you want women to be drafted then, haha. You know, like the implication that I've only spent about 2 seconds of my life thinking about this, and that all I want is for things to be exactly equal, meaning I guess that if women, you know, were eligible for the draft, then, oh, look, like things are equal, then I should be happy. Like it's kind of used as like a gotcha, and that's not how I feel. I think we should be done away with the draft altogether. So no, I don't think that women would be in a better position if they were eligible to be drafted. I think men shouldn't have to do it either. And so that's like an example of, would things be more the same? Yes. Do I think women would be more empowered? Absolutely not. And so it's like sameness isn't necessarily my goal. I also think that a lot of his systemic inequality is rooted in women's role as child bearers. And I think that if sameness is the goal, then like that's not a role that is ever going to be gotten rid of for women, right? Like that's always going to be a physical, mental, emotional burden that they will be carrying.
That's a biological difference.
Yeah.
It can't be rectified by
sameness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in that way, you know, if you like, they're two essentially different kinds of, I don't want to say essentially different kinds of people. That's not what I mean. But 100% equality, the institution applying the exact same identical treatment to everybody isn't how we actually achieve equity, isn't how we actually get the things that people need in order to thrive in the context that they're in. So I forget my point, but I don't think that for me, exact sameness doesn't feel like the goal. But one of my goals is to get rid of the incredible gaping disparity when it comes to priesthood ordination.
Sure. And I think what I'm hearing as well is at the core, it's free will. You know, one of the, to me, one of the deepest principles of the LDS faith is having free will, right? Mm-hmm. And that it's not based on gender, that your free will is not based on the gender, but it's based on you as an individual with free will.
Yeah.
Like everybody has, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
It's my turn?
I think so.
It's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. In your meetings that are made up entirely of men, do you feel like women or their teachings are ever held in high esteem?
For me, I feel like ever held in high esteem, yes. Often held in high esteem, no. And I think that's just oftentimes by nature of the availability or the encouragement of what's available to us in terms of, with the Elders Quorum, our lesson schedules are based off of general conference, the previous general conference for the following 6 months, right? And there are, as far as I can recall, usually 3 women that speak in the entire conference over the course of 5 sessions. So in that way, no, definitely not that same availability. As far as what I'm beginning to understand and value better at this point in my life and in my responsibilities is, I feel like the more diverse thought that we can get in any setting, the better informed we will be. And in that way, even just by virtue of diversity, I'm drawn towards, because as a presidency, we decide on which talks that we have as our lesson schedule. And I deliberately try to see with the women's talks, but like, what can we learn from this to expand our view as individuals and hopefully narrow some of that just stereotypes and thinking gaps between the way that men think and the way that women think, because we all speak the same linguistic language, but we often feel like we speak such different dialects of that same language that we will never understand. It's like, I feel like that's a very, just almost like a give up sort of attitude right off the bat instead of, well, let's try to understand each other. And frankly, a lot of the men within our group, we don't understand each other. There are so many differences just with background, with experiences, with personalities that oftentimes we don't see eye to eye either. But that's the value of having conversations and trying to, is so that we can establish understanding. And in context with this question, not so much to understand the difference between the two sexes, but just to be able to approach someone and understand them as the difference between two individuals. So in a long, roundabout way, I'm trying to answer your question. I would say the short answer is no. But I think there's improvement. I think there's a lot more improvement to be made. And that's something that I'm, again, at this point in my life, with my understanding, I'm a student right now. There are so many things that I don't know. There are so many things I've been closed to even considering in the past, that it's like, man, the whole world is open, that I don't have to accept everything that I've never considered, but I need to consider those things I haven't considered, so that hopefully I can be a person with free will who can make my own decisions of my beliefs, my values. Yeah, we're working on it, but we've got a lot of progress to still make.
You're doing a good job.
Oh, well, thank you.
The conditioning is big.
Yeah, I agree.
All of our conditioning is big, no matter what.
Yeah. And it's not just religious, it's societal, it's traditional, thousands of years of
how we got here.
Yeah, of history. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, of course. Okay, this one's more personal for me in terms of not so much institutional. I mean, it obviously relates to institutional, but me and my position and what I'm interested at this point and my responsibilities to understand better. If you could go back, pick wherever in the past, probably in a church setting, but if you could go back, what kind of support from the leaders would have made a difference? And that's pretty broad.
Yeah, what kind of difference?
Yeah. As far as where you're at now, looking back, just that disparity that...
Do you mean specifically made a difference as far as like my empowerment or
yes.
disempowerment as a woman?
Yeah. In the church setting specifically.
I wish that leaders didn't make stupid sexist comments from the pulpit. I think it's unfunny to make jokes about how annoyed you get at the sound of your wife's voice from the pulpit. And like, I've heard that.
Really?
Yeah. And I think I'm remembering it specifically. I think it was a member of the High Council. And, because there's just this trope about how women just don't shut up and they're nags or whatever. And it is like, to me, and yeah, it was a joke, right? Like he made a joke and people laughed. But I guess, and I don't think, like, I feel like I understand a joke, and I don't feel like I'm too sensitive, but I guess even at the time, like I had the expectation that men with priesthood authority who were leaders, by the way, it was a singles ward, and this was like a middle-aged man who was married. So someone who's supposed to be serving a role as sort of an example to people who were younger and still forming their relationships. I guess I had higher expectations. Yeah. And I forget exactly how it went, but I like told him I thought it was really unfunny, like to his face. I told him I thought it was inappropriate. And he just like doubled down. And that put me in the uncomfortable position of like, just like of having to advocate for myself to a leader because of his bad behavior.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Yeah. And I think most, honestly though, like that's an example which maybe seems like somewhat obvious to people, but most leaders, most of their good behavior still feels like a consolation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that example, some of my, I guess, reaction internally with that is like, that's rude and inappropriate to say about anybody, let alone a spouse, you know. And either direction, whether if a woman said that about her husband, that would be inappropriate. And like personally, that's kind of how I feel. And I think what my impression though is because of that disparity that already exists, and then coming from an authority figure, it almost solidifies that disparity as right and righteous. Is that maybe accurate? That's again just my impression.
Or at least acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's not something that anyone would ever need to question.
Yeah. Maybe it's not encouraged, but it's definitely not discouraged. And yeah, like you said, acceptable.
Yeah. And if you're the one that has an issue with it and you're the one that says something, then you are the one who's hysterical.
Yeah.
And can't read the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just by being the one that makes a protest for a behavior or a pattern that you feel needs to change, that's not, it's, I guess, a reversal of blame in some ways. If it's like, hey, this is going on, I don't feel good about this, can we talk about this? And if the response is, you've already said this, why are you talking about this again?
Mm-hmm.
And then just an unwillingness to be introspective.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I feel like that's a reversal of
blame.
And
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which we know, like from our, I guess 2 episodes ago, the temple recommend bishop who said I couldn't have my temple recommend until I was depressed. Like that's an example of somebody responding in a way that was really different and really positive and didn't just turn it right back around on me.
When you put up protest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he was really receptive to it. And so certainly being receptive to and being a generally approachable person is like that would have been nice. I mean, I had a lot of great priesthood leaders and like they were all good. Here's the thing. They were good men doing their best and most of the time doing a pretty good job in the system that they were in. And I have, you know, a list of experiences with priesthood leaders where they said incredibly empowering and helpful and supportive things to me. And still, like, the system itself is a problem. Like, the imbalance of power is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even for those who are trying to create more balance, because the system's the way that it has been, it's hard to balance that on an ongoing basis.
I think it's a fool's errand. And I mean, people are making all kinds of efforts and people are having all kinds of real meaningful experiences.
Yeah.
And so, of course, don't want to imply that, like, as long as women don't have the priesthood, nobody should try to change these things in the ways that they can within the system. Because I think it has real and positive effects on people when they do. I guess, to me, it will always just feel a little bit hollow. And I think that no matter how much of a gap is closed, the gap that remains will be so much bigger. And so to me, it feels like I'm just never going to be able to ignore that gap that remains.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or say like, oh, look, they're doing so good. They're making these strides, like, yay, hurrah, hurrah.
From where you're coming from, they're making these strides is like, well, shouldn't this have been baseline?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, oh, they put a paper cut on that person who has a stab wound and is like bleeding out, like, yeah, that maybe kept like 5 milliliters of blood in, but like they're not doing nearly enough. They're not doing what they should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Let's see. Is it time to go back the other direction?
Yes.
Growing up, and you can, I guess, talk about this as much into your life as you would like. What did you think of as wife material? And I guess I'm not asking so much like, what are your Ashton's like personal preferences, but like what kind of, as far as what you were taught within the church, and the surrounding culture, like what were you taught made a woman good?
Yeah, I would say just trying to, it's complicated for me because, again, my outlook has changed a lot, especially since being married. But looking back at maybe some of the messages that I got, whether they were overt or more modeled or subconsciously, I guess, shared.
Sort of implied.
Implied, yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think for me, a mom that would stay at home and raise as many kids as they can have, right? Who loved God more than her husband and more than her children. Yeah, and was just super supportive of her husband in the callings that he had, I guess. I mean, I'm kind of trying to, in some ways, it's kind of the caricature of what I feel like some of the messages that I got as a kid. Yeah.
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 How do you relate to that now? Like thinking back on it, well, is that your opinion now? Yeah. Is that your opinion now?
That's not my opinion now. And I want to go back, and I'm channeling some of my inner childhood preferences and whatnot. I loved girls with ponytails. I loved, and that's not like a church thing, explicit or overt teaching or anything, but for some reason, like preference-wise as a kid, that was something that I just felt like I really liked, was ponytails.
Like high ponytails or like low ponytails, or did it not matter?
I think high ponytails probably.
My
Yeah.
husband has a thing for me when I have a high ponytail.
Oh yeah? Cool.
Yeah. I think, I have a little bit of a theory about it, but I think we're going to talk about that when we're not recording, but
Sure.
keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of those broader messages I definitely internalized, as far as someone that loves God more than me. You know, when we fall in love, the wife material is someone that has a stronger testimony of God than their love for me. You know, and I guess in a lot of ways, that's hard at this point in my life to think about, because it's like, I don't know how to put this. I haven't really articulated these thoughts before, but just
say it as plainly as you can, and if it comes out wrong, we'll cut it out.
okay. Yeah, we always have that option. We have
We
that
do.
power. Just that I'm second. You know, in my marriage, I'm second, and I think that's a really hard position to be in for either. Because I think my wife kind of had that same outlook as far as husband material. You know, that both of us are mutually second to God in our relationship. And I, like, looking back, I totally understand, like, I've been there, like, I understand it because I've lived it. But that's a really hard place to feel second in what each of us felt like is the most important relationship in our lives. To be forever in second place, you know, the second consideration. So, yeah, those are some of my thoughts that I push back on, those messages that I kind of internalized as a younger person. That, I question now.
Yeah. I think if it's okay if I make a comment on your question, I was thinking about this last night when we had sent our questions back and forth. When I was active in the church, like for me, a man being active and faithful was like so much more important than literally anything. Like that was my, like we'd do like those stupid activities where you like make lists of like what you want in a partner when you're like in Young Women's or whatever. I didn't really care about anything on the list besides that he was like really spiritual. And as I associated with, I was single for a very, very long time and spent years in singles wards. And as I associated with a lot of men, I realize now that like that I was pursuing like spirituality in the form of a man. And just everything else that actually like really matters for a marriage and compatibility, I just assumed could be figured out, you know, that it like wasn't that important, or because the person that I was marrying would be so spiritual that he would just know how to figure it out to like make it all okay.
Yeah. I think it does go both ways in terms of tradition and those expectations and what we're looking for in a life partner, and not just life partner, but like eternity partner. Mm-hmm. I feel like there were a handful of times that I can recall where the emphasis was moved from focusing on like the checklist that we kind of talk about of requirements for an option to have as a spouse, right? Mm-hmm. And that shift of focus was, well, what are you doing? And I think as I'm thinking about it now, looking back, that shift wasn't, okay, me as an individual and my spirituality and developing my spirituality. It was, how can I fit the list of my future wife? If that makes sense?
It makes perfect sense.
And so it wasn't really a movement from maybe an unhealthy, checklist of expectations of someone that you've never met, that you don't even know, into a healthier form of like,
yeah,
I know.
Everyone's listening like understands like this idea that like you are like that you are being better for somebody else, like that you're there to like, I don't know, in a way sort of to like perform.
Yeah. To build your resume.
Yeah, to build your
so
resume.
that you match what someone is looking for as they look through resumes for a future spouse.
Yeah, so
that goes both directions.
So that you'll get picked.
Yeah, so that you'll get picked.
Yeah.
Instead of, at this point in my life, the healthier approach, I'm going to develop myself. Spirituality if it's important to me as an individual, I'm going to work on it myself, and not to perform for someone else that I'm picked, but to be a healthy whole person. And hopefully I'll meet a healthy whole person, and we'll be able to collaborate better because we are healthy and whole, instead of dependent on each other to succeed as a family. You know what I mean?
I do.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. And hopefully you do too.
They understand.
Yeah.
Our listeners are smart.
I think so too. Okay.
As a doozy.
Yeah. These are hard to articulate thoughts, because like I know I have thoughts and I have feelings, but putting them into words takes time. Okay. This one's maybe more like impact and like action items and changing the impact, I guess. What would it look like for someone in my position to show real positive growth? And not as far as, and this one's a hard one for me, because it's like, I'm not looking for like checklist items so that I can say, hey, I did what you asked me to do, and therefore I'm done. Mm-hmm. But to better understand maybe the impact as you look back with previous dynamics with leaders. We've kind of hit on this. But yeah, like it's something that I'm trying to do, and I want to do, and I want to have an impact on my community. Like, what are things that, I don't know, that would help? Okay, here's my question. I'll state it again. I know I gave a lot of caveats. What would it look like for someone in my position to show real positive growth?
Do you mean like your growth as a person, or to like help the like church grow?
I think they're different questions, and I'm talking more as far as the church grow. Me in my position that can affect the group.
I mean, my real answer is to start picketing down at the church office building with signs that say ordained women or something like that, which I know is like, I'm not actually suggesting that you do that. I'm not suggesting that you in particular do that. Yeah. But I would say, again, to me, most of what I could suggest like still feels like a consolation prize.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all I can say.
It's really complicated.
I wouldn't say it's complicated.
I guess for me, it feels complicated.
It feels complicated. What is it? Why do you want to say why it feels complicated for you?
I feel like because it's expressly disallowed.
It's expressly disallowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are historical and dangerous consequences if I were to do something like that.
There are.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that you're probably, from what you've shared, I think you're probably doing an awesome job, like at your calling and as a member of your ward in this way. I'm just like a little hesitant to like hand you Band-Aids while I'm like seeing someone bleed out.
Yeah, it's much more serious than this question can really respond to.
Oh, no, I don't think that's true either.
Okay.
I mean, my initial response was what I think, as far as like, what can you do to enact real change? It's like, be really loud about the fact that there's like incredible inequities. That's what I actually think that you can do to enact meaningful change. And I also realize the implications of doing something like that. So it's not, I don't think it's complicated. I think it's just difficult.
Yeah.
And scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot to consider for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for answering, and thanks for giving me a lot to think about.
Sure. That's why I'm here.
Yep.
That's why
Me too.
I'm here. Okay. Let's see. We have a little bit of time left. Do you feel like we want to do another question, or do you feel like, do you have any thoughts you want to wrap up with? Or any questions? You can ask me anything.
I don't know. I'm an over-preparer, and if I haven't prepared, the thoughts, they come when they come, but just gathering them quickly and spitting them out, it's not a strong suit. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
Do you feel kind of gross right now?
A little bit.
Yeah.
And not, I don't know.
We can cut any of this out. We can cut any of it out.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel...
I don't think we need to.
Do you... Ooh.
I think these are good things to consider.
Yeah.
I think it's just because it's so unfamiliar with certain parts of me that, like, that's the reason why. But
can you, so you said it feels a little gross. Can you like reach down inside yourself and sort of like, this is going to sound weird, like touch the ickiness? I know we have like 3 minutes left to record.
yeah.
Like, can you like feel
Why?
the crux of the grossness?
I think some of it is obviously like the social cost that it could be with some of the things, as I consider, like, could I do that? Like, is that a valid thing that I could do? A part of it is as well, is that the right thing for me to do right now? Like, just some of the personal impact and just the unknown is really scary.
It is really scary.
I think that's a human thing.
It's terrifying to be on the bridge.
Yeah. I think that goes for anybody. Like, if something's unknown. Yeah. So I think that's part of the broad icky that I'm trying to reach, of those feelings. The wonder if my individual actions or voice would make much of an impact. So like the cost versus benefit. Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Thanks for doing all of this hard thinking and processing out loud for everybody.
Yeah.
I don't often some of these things that you're expressing, a lot of people experience them, and they usually, I think, experience them in places that are, and in ways that are very private, and sometimes can feel quite dark as well.
Yeah.
But they say sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we got to wrap up.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that my job? I think so. I think I'm the wrap up girl, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody. I have a feeling we will be revisiting many of these topics. Let us know your thoughts. Like, follow, share, do all the things. If you can support us, there are links in the bio. And take care, everybody.
Bye. Thanks. Mitch, we miss you.
Come save us, Mitch, from ourselves.